Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Blitz. Hope you're all doing well. 17 through 32 for the live mock draft. Going to finish it up here. With me this time, a couple less people, but that's all right. We'll make it through it a little shorter this time as well. Sam is above me. Mike is below me. How are you guys doing?
We love being below you, Jeff.
You love being below me. Sam's the one above me. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing well, fellas. I'm doing well. I can't wait to finish this draft. We had a couple surprising picks last week, and we had some guys go off on each other with some of these shocking picks. But second half should be interesting.
All right, so just like last time, we have the picks divvied up. If you look, you can see in the Excel sheet we have for the draft, it is color-coded, so if you look there, you can see the same color for who is picking in a snake order because we have less people, and this is how it works out. So we've all got roughly 5 to 6 picks. First one of those being Mike, 17, with the Raiders. What terrible John Gruden pick are you going to make?
I'm going to make one that I don't think John Gruden can even screw up here. You lost everyone on your offensive line beside Richie Incognito. Elijah Vera Tucker has the ability to play every position on that offensive line, mediocrely and great at other positions. I think you get a guy like that, and you can build your offensive line around him at whatever position you choose. So I'll go Elijah Vera Tucker at 17.
I like this pick a lot, and you nailed it when you said they lost a lot. I mean, they traded Rodney Hudson to the Arizona Cardinals. And Elijah Vera Tucker screams versatility. I mean, I like him as a prospect. I like him better than Austin Jackson coming out last year, who I think the Dolphins reached a little bit. But he has a ton of promise and a very promising career ahead of him.
Yeah, after getting rid of everyone, like you said, Rodney Hudson, Trent Brown, they definitely needed to shore up this offensive line. And Vera Tucker can play either guard or tackle if you need him to, as you said, with the flexibility. Good pick there. Number 18, Miami. What do you got, Sam?
So I was going to go Vera Tucker, but I had taken Penei Sewell earlier. I'm going to go with JOK,
Mm.
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. They surprisingly let go of Kyle Van Noy, who I I don't think he's on a team now, but they have their true linebacker. They need that guy. They need that true linebacker to be that franchise cornerstone. And you know, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is an athletic freak, and he's a dude that's versatile and he can make plays from all over the field. And I love this pick a lot.
Thoroughly actually went back to New England, so Bill Belichick playing a couple more games with all of us.
Oh, did he actually? He
Yeah.
went back to New England.
I knew he visited. I didn't know if he. Yeah.
Yeah, they even got Josh Uchi to change numbers so that Van Noy could have 53 back.
Wow, that's actually crazy. All right, so at 19 now with the football team, this kind of sucks. Owusu Koromoa was probably gonna be my pick there. That was a good spot for him. Otherwise, though, this team does still need. They could use line help. I don't think that would be bad at all. And there's a guy I really like on the board here. I'm going to go with Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State. Best tackle on the board. He's just a bruiser. Up there as one of the best run blockers in this class, if not the best. I'd heard Brett Coleman say that he is like Brian Bulaga on rabies. So I'm going to trust what Brett says. So, yeah, that seems like
Is on rabies the PG version of on steroids? Is that what we're saying now?
I guess. I don't know. You'd have to ask Brett about that one on Twitter or something like that. So, yeah, Tevin Jenkins. If you haven't seen Brett's video on him, the thumbnail is literally just Tevin Jenkins. I don't know if you guys have seen his like class picture at Oklahoma State, but he's like just this really mild-mannered looking like nerd almost. Like he does like the bully's homework like at lunch or something, but in reality he's Tevin Jenkins.
And this is a pick too. I really like this pick. And Tevin Jenkins, I think, is a guy that can potentially we might see him go earlier than usual, like earlier than a lot of people expect. And I think 19, even in the top 20, is definitely where I think he has the talent to fall. So I like this pick a lot.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and then to number 20 with Chicago. This is a rough one. We've just brought in our franchise quarterback, Andy Dalton. So we have that figured out, of course. So then I think after this might be another spot to go line. That's probably where I would go. So I'm going to go ahead and draft Samuel Cosmi at this spot. Super athletic guy. Not a lot else to say about this pick. You want to protect Andy Dalton because we know he's not a guy who is going to move around a lot. So Sam Cosmi is my pick at this spot.
This is a nice pick. I definitely would have gone offensive line as well because I think one of their guys, I think it might be Leno or Massey. One of the two is up after next season. So I would have liked this pick as well. I also liked Jaylen Mayfield here a lot too.
I think they fit really well with Daniels as well. Daniels a young centerpiece on that line.
Yeah. All right. Colts at 21. What do you got, Sam?
So you could go offensive line here, protect Carson Wentz. I think it makes a lot of sense. But there's one guy that's on the board at 21 that I'm a little bit surprised that he's fallen this far. I fully expected Mike to take him at the Cardinals, but Jalen Phillips also makes sense. Not a ton of depth at the cornerback room for Indianapolis. They did re-sign Xavier Rhodes. He's only on a 1-year deal, and I'm taking J.C. Horn here, the guy that blew up his pro day, and he's physical, and that he does. We've went through this before. Has a little bit of the penalty problems, but Indy has done a really nice job, developing corners like Rocky Sin, hopefully now coming out. If they can bring Xavier Rhodes back to at least half of what he was, he's a former All-Pro, right? Coached under Jerry Gray. You bring in J.C. Horn, he's got the talent to be that true corner for Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think here we're going to go next to a Tennessee. Last year you saw Buffalo. They were desperate need of an edge rusher. They kind of passed on it the first round. I think one could argue it kind of came back to bite them in the playoffs when they couldn't get to the quarterback, especially Mahomes in that championship game. So I'm going to go here with Tennessee. I think Azeez Ojulari, I know there's questions about his size, durability, but I think if you can get him bouncing off the edge here, it could give them a big chance to open up, especially, I mean, whenever you have Derrick Henry running the ball, especially in winter games here, I think you got a chance to win any game. So get yourself some defensive help.
Yeah, I don't mind that pick. I personally think I would have gone corner just because the room. I mean, they did sign Janoris Jenkins in the offseason, but they lost Malcolm Butler. They lost Adoree Jackson. That's where I would have gone, but I totally see the fit here with Azeez Ojulari. All right.
And I think you're going to see next year with the New York Jets, you got your star quarterback here with Zach Wilson. Then we're going to go cornerback here and get you Caleb Farley. I know there's some questions about injury and durability with him as well. But I think going forward, I mean, New York, you had Revis Island, and hopefully you can get Fairley Island coming up here because you need that dominant corner to match up with Quinnen Williams, C.J. Mosley, and the rest of the talented pieces on that defense.
I like this a lot. And, they, like you said, Mike, the Jets don't have a true corner. There's these next two teams, I think you could argue maybe a Najee Harris pick because Pittsburgh's actually next. And they're projected or they're rumored to be targeting a running back early. But, Farley, if you want to talk about a guy that has that prototypical NFL size for a corner, it's absolutely Caleb Farley. And I think, if he falls to the spot, which I think is definitely possible because of his durability and injury concerns, which, kept him from performing at his pro day, he could turn into a steal. And, some have argued that he was the best cornerback prospect in this draft, until he had opted out.
Especially because, the Jets aren't going to be winning anytime soon. So, it doesn't really matter if they take a guy like Farley who might have some injury concerns because, if they suck, they're going to be back, in these spots the next couple of years anyway to draft the next big corner or whoever. I like taking a risk here with this next pick. You've got your star quarterback in Zach Wilson, so why not take a shot on a guy like Farley who has the potential to be the best corner in this class? So then, Sam, what do you got at Pitt?
So I'm not going to go Najee here. I think one of the biggest concerns now is, turning to the offensive line. I like Landon Dickerson, but I think his durability is a little bit of a reach here. I think they can also wait for Creed Humphrey in the second round. I'm going to go for a guy that, I like a lot. You don't have to rush him into a starting job. And that's Jaylen Mayfield. He's only 20. He might have that limited tape to show. But, I want to say he opted out and never came back, if I'm not mistaken. And, he plays with a lot of, upper body strength and, is extremely active with his hands. And, I like this pick a lot. I mean, the offensive line of Pittsburgh's getting old. One of the Pouncey just retired. The Ravens are just signed the other day, Villanueva. They have an aging O-line, so they need that franchise cornerstone offensive tackle to, protect Ben and even post Ben Roethlisberger era. And I think Jaylen Mayfield is just the guy for that.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a fantastic point about him sitting out. You're going to look at guys like Wyatt Davis, potentially, Shaun Wade, plenty of other guys in this draft class. I could list a long name of them that opted out. And I think it's going to be interesting. Gregory Russo, another one, just to see what their value could have been if they would have played last season. Considering that you look at some of these guys, Mayfield could have been a top 20 pick without sitting out.
Right. And I saw a mock the other day, really surprising. Gregory Russo falling to the third round, which was insane. That is the farthest I've ever seen him drop.
Yeah, that's a really far drop, but I like the Mayfield pick there. You're the Steelers, you need offensive line, especially with Ben being there. All right, then. 25, the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is an interesting spot. They have needs at tight end, but I think they can wait until that 33 pick to get Freiermuth. So I'm going to take a safety here. I'm going to take Trayvon Merrick off the board. they need the help at that spot, and I think that they can wait to get a guy like Freiermuth at pick number 33. So then, for number 26 now, the Cleveland Browns. Now this one, we had talked about this, Sam. They basically have to go defense here just because their offense is so talented. Like, they have so many guys, like, every single position pretty much. Like, they're pretty much set as far as offense goes. So I'm going to take a guy who's going to be on the inside of both Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett, and that's Christian Barmore out of Alabama. I think this is pretty good value for him at this spot. He projects as probably like a top 20 guy in this class, but just because of defensive tackles and their value, especially in this draft, they're a little thinner. But let's face it, I mean, nose tackle, defensive tackle is already like a pretty dry position in the first place. So why not get another guy for that pass rush?
I like this, and actually, what's concerning though is I think there's a very strong possibility you might see a guy like Barmore drop out of the first round, and one of the big reasons that came out because of that is his refusal to being coached. And I didn't read too deep into it, but the biggest part was him basically refusing to, allowing himself to be coached. They had also cut Sheldon Richardson recently, which I believe saved them $12 million, and they don't have any depth in their interior. So I like this a lot. Another pick I really like for Cleveland in the interior side. He's versatile. He played both in and out. If he's there, whether second round pick, and that's Ronnie Perkins. I know Chase was a big fan of him. This Ronnie Perkins, I think, is an absolute sleeper of a prospect in this draft, but I like Christian Barmore here as well.
Yeah, Perkins is definitely a sleeper. I don't know if he'll be available to Cleveland in the second or third round, but if he is, I would consider looking at him because Clowney's only on a 1-year deal, I believe. So, you can always rotate him in there. And even if Barmore, for whatever reason, is sucking or whatever, you can even rotate him inside. So I like the idea of them getting him in the second round. All right, Sam, what do you got for Baltimore?
So I'm going to go with an edge here. They just lost Yannick to the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to go with a guy that, opted out from Miami. That's Gregory Russo. This dude is an absolute animal, and because of his opt-out, we saw tons of edge rushers come out: Azeez Ojulari, Jalen Phillips, Kwity Paye, who I think is the number one edge. Jeff, I don't remember who you had as your edge one.
Kwity Paye is my number one edge in the class.
The edge rusher class, the number one is extremely wide open. I've seen guys put Azeez Ojulari. I've seen guys put Russo still, Kwity Paye, even Jalen Phillips. At this point, that edge rusher's room is wide open, but Gregory Russo is an absolute animal, and he should not be slept on. And he's that franchise piece. They re-signed Derek Wolfe, but they don't have. They've got Calais Campbell as well, who I think.
Thinking about Matthew Judon.
Matthew Judon is gone.
Yeah,
as
he
well.
went to the Patriots. Right?
Oh, is he gone now? Yeah, my bad on that one.
No, it's all good because he played under a franchise tag, and he, along with plenty of other guys that went to the Patriots, but yeah, I mean they don't have. They're starting to lose a little bit of depth there in the edge rusher room. Another guy that I was looking was Trayvon Moehrig. But Jeff had taken him to the Jaguars. But Calais Campbell also is getting up there in age, so you can also Gregory Russo can come in and be that guy. But when Calais Campbell leaves, he can be that true edge rusher.
Even better now that Matthew Judon's gone, that I was just made aware of. So great pick, Sam.
Replace a 6'8" guy with another 6'8" guy in Gregory Russo. Like, his physical stuff is insane for Russo.
The only fears I have about Russo is his lack of pro day stats. He did not really show up, and it makes you wonder how he spent his season off. That's going to be something teams address in their interviews and the betting process here.
Yeah, and that's the hard part, right? Is we don't have access to the interviews, the medical, like all those little things that go into like drafting a guy and truly determining his value. So that's what sucks about being a fan, but it also makes it interesting as a fan because you sort of get to speculate and come up with stuff on your own as you hear it. So, all right, Mike, what do you got for the Saints at number 28?
So I gotta say, I'm excited about these next two picks because I think I'm picking impact players on both teams. New Orleans, Sean Payton might be up there for most creative mind in the NFL. And there's one player, you could argue that you might not want a gadget player, such as Rondale Moore in the first round. But, I mean, I can't imagine what Sean Payton will be able to scheme up with Rondale Moore. You're going to have a big arm potentially in Jameis Winston. Rondale Moore can run. I mean, he might not be the most refined route runner, but who better to learn from than Slant Boy himself, Michael Thomas? I mean, you got Michael Thomas on one side. I can't believe I'm blanking right now, but they had a wide receiver kind of come onto the scene last year as well. I think Rondale Moore, if you kind of fit him in that slot, third wide receiver role, I mean, even play him out of the backfield, I mean, this guy has a ton of potential, and I think if he goes to other teams, he might become a huge bust. But with the right offensive mind, I think he's one of the most prolific players in this draft class.
Yeah, I can totally see it. I'm not opposed to him going in the first round, like late in the first round. You know, as we'd said, you know, his size is a thing, but he's an exciting player to watch, and he's going to bring a lot of excitement to the Saints offense, who did lose Emmanuel Sanders. So,
Mike, I love this pick, and you know the first position that came to mind when I think of the Saints is wide receiver room. You could also go corner, or even safety, but you know they don't have that true wide receiver too. You might be thinking of Traquan Smith, Mike. I think there was another guy, you know, Delonte Harris, but I agree. I mean, Sean Payton is a mastermind, and if he gets a guy like Rondo Moore, who can be that, you know, come in and compete right away for that wide receiver 2 spot. You know, he's fluctuating. I'm sure you have him as your top 5. He's in my 5 to 6 range right now, but I love this pick. I expected Rashad Bateman here, who is extremely slept on, should not be out of the first, or should not be taken, or should not be falling out of the first round. But I can totally see Rondo Moore here in the first round.
And I would agree. I think Bateman might be more talented. I think he definitely is more talented. But I think when you're Sean Payton, you draft more of a player that a commodity that you know that you can handle. Rondale Moore, I mean, if you can get this guy to hit, we're talking Tyreek Hill 2.0.
And Sean Payton's going to be the guy to do that. As you said, top 5 offensive mind in the NFL.
All right, and then I'll hop on to the next one. Green Bay Packers kind of got it on everywhere, if you can't tell. As the Packers GM right now, I'm a little upset that Rondale Moore just missed us by 1 pick. But I kind of flipped the script now. I think we're going defense. A pick that I wanted to make here, but I won't. I'll tease you guys a little bit. I think a player that's extremely slept on in this draft class is Dylan Moses. He's not a first-round pick. Sam, get your heart rate down. Not taking him at 29. But I think Dylan Moses might be the most slept-on player in this draft class. I mean, he was looking top 10 pick a year ago. He got hurt 2019. This year was the first year he felt fully healthy in a long while, and it took him a while to get used to that.
Yep.
So I think Packers, middle linebacker. You look at the past couple teams that have been dominant. I mean, a middle linebacker that can really play.
I think huge. I know where this pick's going, but go ahead.
I think we go Jamin Davis, athletic freak. You got the new defensive coordinator in Barry who loves working with linebackers, and Jamin Davis can cover like nobody's business. I mean, this guy has extreme spatial recognition, loves to cover in zone, and then I think there can be questions the quality of teams he played against, as well as the quality of team that he was on, as well as his run stopping ability. But if you look at Green Bay's roster right now, you got Chris Barnes and Kamal Martin, not household names, but both absolute thumpers. And you got Adrian Amos, who might, in my opinion, be the top safety position in the league right now. Sam, again, don't get the heart rate up, just spitting it out there. But I think Jamin Davis in this defense can cover tight ends. I think he could even cover in the slot, to be honest, but we'll have to see what happens there.
I think this pick makes a lot of sense. They need that true linebacker. I thought in terms of flipping the script, I thought you were going to get a guy like Bateman. But yeah, no, I think this pick makes a lot of sense. You know, there's another corner that I really don't think would be that much of a reach, but I don't think he'll be there by our second round pick, and that's the corner out of Kentucky, and Kelvin Joseph, who I think is and also another sleeper. And Dylan Moses, if he's there in like the third round, and like you said, he's coming off a torn ACL, and he was kind of up and down all season, which that probably the ACL tear had probably had something like probably played into a factor in that. But they need that true linebacker, and you know not saying Jamin Davis is going to be this type of player, but I think I would love to see, good draft another hybrid guy, throughout one of these 10 picks in the draft. And a guy that I really, really like is Talanoa Hufanga that I would absolutely draft in the third round. But Jamin Davis, I think, makes a lot of sense here.
I just like to pay attention to, he ran a 4.41, I believe, and a 4.37. So this guy has wheels. I mean, he's going to be able to cover everyone. But it's the Packers, so can I scratch that and actually take Kellen Mond?
I was going to say Kyle Trask.
I was going to say you trade up for Mond or Trask instead. So
we don't talk about that here.
The old Sam Ehlinger guy at 29.
Sam Ehlinger. This dude. All right, Sam, what do you got at pick 30 for the Bills here?
So honestly, I was a little bit nervous Mike was considering this guy. Buffalo needs corner help outside of Tre'Davious White. They need that true number 2 corner. And I'm going to Asante Samuel Jr. here. And I think he is, I think you could definitely argue being a top 5 corner. I've got him right at 5.
You have him over Newsome.
I've got Newsome lower. I've got Newsome at 4.
Newsome's still on the board, I believe.
Yeah,
or I guess so. That's if you wanted to take Newsome.
Thank you. I didn't even realize that. I'm going to go Greg Newsome here. What I was going to say about Asante Samuel Jr., though, is, he doesn't have that prototypical size. He's a bit undersized for his position, but he plays like a bigger-bodied player. And I'm going Greg Newsome here. And I'm very, very surprised that he is at this pick. He's arguably a top five corner in this draft. I've got him in the 3 to 4 range, probably at 4. But if you want to talk about a guy that, is just so fluid with his hip mobility, I think Greg Newsome might have the best hip mobility out of all these cornerback prospects in this draft. And you pair him up with Tre'Davious White, who's a top 3 corner, that is going to be scary for the AFC.
I think my only fear, Sam, and only pushback I have on Newsome is the guy has not played a full college season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you talk about hip mobility. I worry if his main trait is hip mobility, if he hasn't been able to stay healthy, how long it is before that's gone. I mean, I think Newsome, the ceiling is the sky on this guy. I mean, this guy can do everything that you want a corner to do. But I think we could see him fall into day 2 just due to the injury concerns.
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned that before in the last mock, Mike, where I think I don't remember which team you were picked. It might have been the Cardinals, right, where you were considering Greg Newsome and you had chosen another direction because of that injury concern. And I think I'm not arguing with that. I think Greg Newsome, if I had Greg Newsome and Asante Samuel Jr. on the board, prototypical size, it's Greg Newsome. But if you want to talk about a guy that's not necessarily more physical, but more of a reliable guy than Greg Newsome, just because of injury concerns, I would also say Asante Samuel Jr. But if you want to talk about a better prospect, right now I would go Greg Newsome still.
Sam, I want to push back for 1 second. Just want to hear the thoughts. And I'm sorry, Jeff, I'm cutting you off.
No, go ahead.
And also, Jeff, huge kudos to you on getting Baltimore at that 31 pick. Well, it could have been really easy to forget that.
Yeah, I managed to remember that. And we'll get to them when we get to them. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think we got to talk about that trade. But Sam, you don't think about Bateman here? You didn't mention Bateman at all. You've been talking about Bateman for a while. You don't think you want to get Josh Allen and another bona fide potential star wide receiver on the other side of Diggs?
I think wide receiver is absolutely one of the needs, but I don't think it's too much of a need that they should be selecting in the first round. I think they should be going, in secondary first. I think corners should absolutely come first. But if you want to talk about a third-round pick, third, maybe fourth round, this is insanely deep in the last year wide receiver class, deepest wide receiver class that we've seen in a while. Rashad Bateman's to the point where he might turn into a steal, and I'm very surprised that we're seeing him drop so far. Him and Minnesota didn't do a ton. Minnesota lost a lot of, Minnesota had a lot of guys transfer out. I'm pretty sure. I think after the season, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they did the best recruiting. They had quite a few decommits, but they had a very disappointing season, to say the least.
They row the boat with PJ Fleck. Row that boat.
We're Badgers fans, if those watching can't tell.
Now, Mike, you mentioned Rashad Bateman. Talk about this next pick here, but let's see who Jeff picks.
Yeah, so in an ideal world, if I were the Ravens, I would have taken Bateman at 27 and then gone tackle with this pick because they did just trade Orlando Brown to the Kansas City Chiefs. That was the big thing in this deal. But I'm going to go Rashad Bateman here just because he is an absolutely perfect fit. You've got Hollywood Brown is your deep threat on the outside. Sammy Watkins, I believe, is their wide receiver 2 on the outside. And Bateman can come in day one and challenge for that wide receiver 2 spot. But you can also play him out of the slot. And they need to work the middle of the field more with a guy like Lamar Jackson, who he's not a bad passer, but he is definitely better, over the middle of the field and with those smaller throws. So I really like Rashad Bateman, one of the best fits in the class to me for a team.
And I think this is a beautiful pick. I think you look at sorry, Sam, didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
But I think there are questions about Lamar Jackson's longevity as a star quarterback in this league. I'm not one of those ones who believe that. But I think if you're Baltimore, you're going to surround him with as many weapons as possible. You're going to give him 3 solid wide receivers. You're going to kind of see what the Giants are doing with Daniel Jones to an extent, where you're going to give them every single piece that they can to succeed. And I think, you're going to prove the haters wrong that Lamar Jackson can play well for a number of years yet in this league.
Yeah, if they haven't opened up contract talks, if I'm not mistaken. If they haven't made a ton of progress. And in order to solidify that, I should say, is to put as much talent and weapons around him as possible. Something that the Jets failed to do with Sam Darnold. And Rashad Bateman, I think, is a top 3 wide receiver. One of my cousins has him as the best wide receiver.
Best wide receiver in the class?
Yeah. Which is hard.
You probably should not cite him ever again on this.
It's very hard to put someone above Jamar Chase because of his performance this past season, even his time at LSU and his pro day. But anyways, the question that arises is, Jeff, you had mentioned wide receiver 2. And Rashad Bateman absolutely has the talent to come in and compete as a wide receiver 2. But for the future, 1, Sammy Watkins is only on a 1-year deal, which is a solid pickup. And 2, in my opinion, I don't think Marquise Brown has quite lived up to his first-round potential just yet. I think he's got the talent to do so. But in the future, I think Rashad Bateman has the talent to compete for that true wide receiver 1. Because I think out of all 32 teams in the NFL right now, I think Rashad Bateman has the talent to be a wide receiver 1 on quite a few of these teams.
Yeah, and I would say also, just because you have Lamar Jackson there, that really helps Bateman's chances at becoming wide receiver 1.
Yep.
He can't quite unlock Hollywood Brown as much as we'd like to think that he can. Just because
we could be wrong, though.
We could be wrong, and I would love
another wide receiver.
I would love to be wrong about that. I would love to be wrong about Lamar Jackson's arm strength, passing issues in quotation marks there, but he's just better over the middle of the field right now. And Bateman's going to be a reliable guy who he's just going to be able to find, working the middle of the field and getting open and going to be able to throw him the ball. Also, side note, he played in the Big Ten. He had to run block a lot. And in Baltimore, you're going to need to do that a little bit. So that's just another side note about that.
Will this pick change for you? I guess I'm just picking at straws here because we're on last pick here. But would this pick change for you if they sign Antonio Brown within the next week?
It depends on how long. Like, I think if it's just like a 1-year deal, then see, I don't know. That's really hard because like I do think there's a reason they traded for this pick. I think they wanted to get a tackle here, and I think they're going to take Bateman at number 27. So I don't know. I think with Antonio Brown, it's really hard to predict how he's going to do with anyone not named Tom Brady at this point because he seems to really like playing for that guy. I really don't know. You're really busting my brain with that one there.
No, I just asked because I think I agree with you spot on that I think they traded for 31 with the intent of taking Leatherwood, or you could see Eichenberg or another offensive lineman go here. And I think 27, I don't know if they're thinking wide receiver at 27 because there's going to be a lot of talents dropping off the board here.
That's true. There's going to be a lot of edge players, potentially. There's going to be a lot of edge players, potentially tackles. I don't think so, but you could see a tackle end up there somehow. But yeah, specifically with the edge class, I could see a guy like Russo dropping here. I mean, I could even see Jalen Phillips dropping to the spot if teams don't like his medical or whatever. Even if they are really high on a guy like Jason Owe, they could potentially pick him here. I wouldn't do it, but that's always a possibility.
Yeah, that might be a for pick 32 is if you don't like Owe.
Yeah.
I also like the idea, especially since Jeff, you had just mentioned earlier that they had traded Orlando Brown in there. I'm not the biggest fan of Liam Eichenberg in the first round, but Liam Eichenberg is also a guy that, can come in and be that elite pass blocker for Lamar Jackson. And, Liam, the one knock I give on Liam Eichenberg is his footwork isn't great. He's not that prototypical, all-round offensive tackle. He's absolutely probably one of the best pass blockers in this draft. But if you want to talk about a guy that's efficient in run blocking, Liam Eichenberg is not necessarily that guy. There's definitely other guys like Tevin Jenkins that are more polished in that area. And I think him and Tommy Kramer, if I'm not mistaken, I think they were hurt for their something. They didn't get cleared for something. I think it was very recently too. But there's very few teams like the Indianapolis Colts. I can see Liam Eichenberg going, although I think it's a little bit of a reach. But I think for the Colts it makes sense. But they need that Orlando Brown replacement, and I think Liam Eichenberg would make sense here. And Mike had also mentioned a guy like Alex Leatherwood, who I think we could see fluctuate within the first 2 rounds.
And Leatherwood's going to come down to, because I've seen a lot of concerns with his character and whether he wants to play guard.
Yep.
I've seen that a lot, even though I think a lot of teams project him better as a guard. But Baltimore always needs help on the interior, especially when you're running the ball a lot there. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with what I think will be a tackle at the 31 spot. But here we have Rashad Bateman, who kind of fell into their lap. So one of the best fits in the draft.
Take us home, Jeff.
All right. So first off, let's just be real. This is a luxury pick for them. I mean, they have got everything filled out pretty much. They have probably the best roster in football, I would say, just talent-wise, like all over the board. So I'm going to go with what people could say is a reach, I really like the fit, and that's Levi and Wuzurike at pick 32. You're not sure about the future of Ndamukong Suh. He's getting older. As Sam had said, Sam's a huge fan of this pick. Vita Vea, they went to the same college together at Washington. You have a little bit of chemistry there. And he doesn't have to start for you right away. He can rotate in, especially with this already stacked defensive front. So I really like him, getting those reps just like once a series, pretty much, rotating in. Really like the fit here with Levi and Wuzurike at pick number 32 for the Buccaneers.
I love this pick. I mentioned before we went live. At this point, Tampa, they brought everyone back, and at this point, they're just looking to build depth. I said I saw Kellen Mond at 32.
That's where I thought
Kellen Mond. I love Kellen Mond to the Buccaneers, especially because I think Kellen Mond's a guy that it's going to need more than a year to develop, and you have Tom Brady on the Buccaneers for more than a year. They had restructured his contract. He might even be, I don't even know. I think it's 2 years now. But Kellen Mond, what better to learn from than one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game of football. And they don't have a ton of depth in the interior line, and I'll be interested to see how many interior D-line prospects go early because this is not a very deep class. We saw two now. We've got Christian Barmore that Jeff had selected to the Cleveland Browns. Levi makes sense. Jeff, I'm not going to repeat myself, but Ndamukong Suh's not getting any younger. And he signed a 1 year veterans minimum deal, and Jeff nailed it. Levi also opted out, so there's I'll be interested. It'll be interesting to see out of some of these prospects how much the opt out has been, like how much of a factor teams are going to play in to that opt out, to certain players more than others. But Levi, like Jeff had mentioned, pairs up with Vita Vea, who the Buccaneers had just exercised his 5th-year option earlier today, and he can be that rotational guy for at least a year. And then you got the Washington Huskies duo for your future, and I love this pick.
One thing I will add is who better learn from than JPP, as Stephen Shea calls him, JPP. And then you got Vita Vea. I mean, you got a stacked offense or defensive line that you get to learn from too.
This Bucs roster is crazy. Like the fact that they can get a guy like Levi at the spot and like set themselves up for the future as well as they have, even with a 40-something-year-old guy at Tom Brady at this point, it's insane how they're able to do it. Like,
I mean, even you consider their wide receiver, like you think they're going to lose one of those guys, but they still have Miller and Johnson sitting in the wings. I mean, I think you picked the only position where they don't have an immense amount of depth, and it's crazy to think that a rotational defensive lineman is going to be their first-round pick.
What I find interesting, too, is, I mean, my personal opinion, I mean, you've got 2 of the top 3 interior D-line prospects, 2 of them opted out. Levi Wuzurike and Jay Tafel. Christian Barmore played kind of an up-and-down season and really turned it on in the college football playoff, and that's where I think his draft stock just skyrocketed. But like I mentioned, the Cleveland pick, I think it came out yesterday that, teams have been concerned about his ability and refusal to be coached. But it'll be interesting. I wouldn't be shocked at all if we don't see a single D-line drafted in the first round. I also wouldn't be surprised if we see one of those guys being Barmore or Levi Wuzurike.
all right, real quick before we get off of this thing, we have a little more time than I expected. So I want to ask you guys something. Out of the mock draft we did, give me your favorite pick and your least favorite pick. I just want to hear what you got.
Okay, I think consensusly we are all going to agree. I think, do you guys all know what pick was probably the worst pick of the draft? I'm going to go 11.
Was it Surtain?
Yeah.
I think Surtain to the Giants made no sense at all. I might have tried to defend James in the moment because I felt bad, but after having a week to think on it, I mean, you have already one of the best secondaries in the NFL and a young quarterback who is struggling to get his feet set in the NFL. I mean, you got to get some help on that offensive line, I think, especially with Slater there.
Yeah.
I can't believe you go Surtain over Slater. Even Parsons, I mean, get Blake Martinez running mate in the middle. I mean, I'm baffled.
Yeah, I would have definitely gone edge rusher. I would have looked at a guy like Kwity Paye,
Kwity Paye was at 10 to
taken
Dallas.
him at Dallas. I also like a guy like Jalen Phillips. I can totally see teams reaching for a guy like Jalen Phillips, but there was another position. Oh, Elijah Vera Tucker, was on the board at 17, which I think is still possible, but that's if I had the Giants big board, I think Elijah Vera Tucker would be near, if not right at the top of my list.
Yeah, I can see them drafting Vera Tucker, and even if they want to, they can probably trade down a couple spots to get him as well. Just because of the talent that's still available on the board. But you're dead on with the Surtain pick. I mean, like, what the hell, man? Like, they've already got a Dory Jackson, Bradbury. Like, I think I tried to defend it at the time by saying something like, you can't ever have too much corner depth in the NFL.
Which is true, but at the same time, like, they're deep enough. They're deep enough where they don't need to be selecting one in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a deep secondary class, but, like, yes, they did just sign a Dory Jackson, who was probably recruited by Logan Ryan, 2 former Tennessee Titans players, And I guess my guess is maybe what played into factor for James was, we didn't see that production out of Adoree Jackson, but even then, they signed Adoree Jackson. I think they paid him a little bit too much, but especially judging by the contract that they gave him, they should not be taking Surtain. They should be going after edge depth or an absolute offensive lineman like Elijah Vera Tucker, or even actually 11. We still had, if I'm looking here, we still had Rashawn Slater on the board. Two guys that I would even go Rashawn Slater over Elijah Vera Tucker. Actually, I didn't even realize that he was still on the board at that pick, especially because I had mentioned at 11 when we were going over this pick last week is Daniel Jones has no excuses anymore. Yes, they cut Golden Tate, but they also have Kenny Golladay, who is extremely, extremely underrated. And there are very few receivers in the NFL that can put up elite numbers with, garbage quarterbacks throwing them the ball or non-QB1s or starting quarterbacks. And Kenny Golladay is one of those guys.
DeAndre Hopkins with Jeff Driscoll and who was their quarterback behind Jeff Driscoll? Daniel Blau.
Yeah.
David Blau.
David Blau. There you go.
Guy. Yep.
Also, they have Sterling Shepard in the slot and Darius Slayton on the outside as well.
Yep.
So, why not give Daniel Jones, someone who is known to have terrible pocket presence and tends to hold on to the ball too long, give him no more excuses for holding on to the ball too long, where maybe some of those came off of him feeling pressured and whatnot with Rashawn Slater, who can also play inside if you really need him to, because they just lost Zeitler.
To the Ravens. Exactly. That's a big reason why I think, guys like Slater or Vera Tucker should be a number one priority.
Yeah. All right, let's stop bagging on James's pick. What was your favorite pick that you see on this board, or what's one that really stands out to you guys? I guess I'll go first. Rashawn Slater at 13 to the Chargers. If that happens, I mean, that's a match made in heaven for them. They need a guy at left tackle, and they just need help on the line in general. So, I mean, we keep saying this. It's verbatim at this point. He can play at guard if you need him to. But Rashawn Slater at 13, I think, would be a slam dunk, home run, whatever you want to call it. I don't think he gets there, but it'd be a good pick.
I don't either.
If it happens, the AFC West is going to be one fun division to watch for the next 20 years. Mahomes and Orlando Brown Jr. You're going to have Slater and Herbert. I mean, you're going to have two of the best quarterback left tackle combinations.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I like Slater as well. That was going to be mine. And if they can get Slater at 13, and I agree with you, Jeff, I think there's an absolute strong possibility that Slater will not be there. They can also consider a guy like Vera Tucker or a guy like Darisaw, who I don't remember who took the Vikings pick last week.
I think that was my pick. I believe. I think I took Darisaw there.
Yeah, I mean, Darius. I think offensive line has to be the number one priority. Because if they truly think, which the way he played, he is absolutely their guy, Justin Herbert, they need to do everything they can to protect him. And Rashawn Slater, I think, was a great pick. I'm going to flip gears here and go to the pick that we picked today. And I'm going to go J.C. Horn to the Colts.
Are you allowed to pick your own picks for your favorite?
Okay, fine. I will go with... How about this? You can't pick Packers either because we're all Packer fans.
Well, that was my pick. I couldn't pick it anyway.
I like Elijah Vera Tucker here a lot at 17. I think Mike had picked him. They don't have any O-line depth, especially in the interior. They signed Kenyon Drake, and Cleveland Farrell they drafted a few years ago, and now there's plans of trying to move him on an interior guy. Because of the signing of Yannick. And I heard rumors that, we might see a little bit more of Kenyon Drake in the passing game as a wide receiver, more so than in the backfield. If they want to boost up their run game and boost up, that interior, I love this Vera Tucker pick. You didn't see a ton of the bull rush from him throughout the season, But like I said, I like him better as a better prospect than Austin Jackson coming out. Austin Jackson has, you know, I think the big reason why he made it into the first round as early as he did is because I think the teams like the Dolphins who had drafted him loved his upside. And I think Elijah Vera Tucker's got tremendous upside.
All right, well then I'll go here. My favorite, probably number 9, Justin Fields to Denver. I mean, you couldn't tell me a better situation for a young quarterback with a chip on his shoulder to start. You're gonna have Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, decent offensive line, Dalton Reisner and others on that offensive line. Defense has pieces there. Yeah, I mean their offensive line. I think they got 3 or 4 mainstays. I mean, you're gonna have a good pass rush on the defense. I mean, if you want a rookie quarterback to go in somewhere and start, you're looking right at Denver. I think that might be the best situation for a rookie quarterback to go out of any. Maybe San Francisco, but I don't think Mac Jones will see the field till late this season or early next. But I think day one starter, Justin Fields is going to have the best situation.
Especially with Pat Shurmur as his offensive coordinator. People like to trash on Shurmur because of his time at the Giants, but he is one of the best OCs in the NFL.
Oh, absolutely.
And also with this, taking a guy at 9, a lot of the guys who are mocked here, like, whether it be Trey Lance or Mac Jones, those guys are going to be competition to Drew Lock. Justin Fields will be the starter over Drew Lock, I think, day one, if that happens. I think if they take Justin Fields at the spot, I think that's like, all right, Drew, you're done. See you later. Or you're just going to be the backup for the rest of your career. Just because I think as a day one starter, Fields is better than maybe not Mac Jones, but he's definitely better than Trey Lance as a day one starter.
Yeah, and I get why I don't think this is the best fit for Justin Fields, but I totally understand.
Yeah.
Huh? For Denver?
How is it not?
If it's
they
just
got an offensive line that's going to let them break out of the pocket, and you're going to have 2 wide receivers that can run and you can throw to on the outside. And rookie quarterbacks love throwing to tight ends. Who's better to throw to than one of the fastest tight ends in the league?
George Kittle in San Francisco. That would be just because it's Kyle Shanahan. Like that would be the best fit. I mean, as I said last week, Nick Mullins is second all time for them within his first 16 starts or something like that in terms of passing.
I'm saying on the basis though of a rookie quarterback that's going to start day one realistically. I mean, if we're talking best fit, I mean you're sending him to Tampa Bay to go play there. I mean, I'm saying of any team that any of these quarterbacks has a realistic chance of starting, Denver's the best fit for any of them.
The best realistic chance of starting, yes, and I like Fields to Denver, and I agree with both of you. I think he absolutely has the talent to come in and compete and be that day one starter. And we saw guys like Garrett Bowles come out, and I don't think I think Dalton Reisner's slowly starting to come out. What I'm curious to see is if I think Vic Fangio could be on his way out after next season, because I think, especially now, another thing to point out, I think I wanted to be pointed out, might have been Darius because he had this pick last week. John Elway is not the, representing their draft picks for GM, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he gave himself a promotion, and so he's not the GM anymore.
Yes,
so that's how he fires himself, by giving himself a promotion.
So, I think this could be a big factor because Darius and I have had multiple conversations with this, is because the Broncos have not banked on any quarterback selections in the draft. And I would love to see a guy like Alex Smith, but unfortunately he retired. Heck of a career. But there's not a lot of quarterbacks on the market. So I think taking a guy like Fields makes sense. I think they need an offensive-minded coach. And there's very few – there's head coaches, there's OCs or D coordinators that are bad head coaches but are great OCs, and Pat Shurmur is one of them. He's easily one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL. And in terms of fit, I like Atlanta a lot. And, Matt Ryan is not the most mobile. However, Atlanta has been rumored to trade out of this pick. They've also been rumored to be taking Kyle Pitts, who is, arguably a top 5 prospect in this draft. But in terms of realistic chance of starting, yes, absolutely, it is Justin Fields. But in terms of fit, because there's, I guess my question for you guys is because there's very indifferent, multiple like both sides opinions on Justin Fields. Do you think Justin Fields is a day one starter?
I think you have to view him as a day one starter. I mean, the talent. I mean, you look at how he played in the college football playoff. I mean, he had two bad games really in college that you can really look at. That Northwestern game, which I mean, people do not give Northwestern credit for being one of the best defenses in college football last year. Followed with Sam. I need to push back before we continue this. The fact that you think they're going to go outside the market or outside the draft for quarterback, I think every sign that they've put out there indicates they're going quarterback in this draft. There's been Teddy Bridgewater available. There has been
that's
Marcus Mariota available.
What I said is they should go outside, but at the same time, quarterback here makes sense because there's none of these guys are better than Drew Lock or could be better than Drew Lock. Teddy Bridgewater is available. I think there's one more guy. They should have gone after Sam Darnold. They should have gone after Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, I think, was.
But what if they didn't because they knew that they could get a quarterback in this draft class that'll start day one?
And Fields could be that guy. I mean, I've always been on the market of because I take it you both are done with Drew Lock, right?
I think he's on his way out.
He's on his way out. He could, he has a slim chance of being the starter even this year, honestly.
And I'm not disagreeing because I think that's where we both, like you two and me, have different viewpoints on a quarterback going to Denver. If it's any quarterback on the board, let's say it's Justin Fields or Trey Lance. If you have Fields and Lance on the board like we had, I would absolutely go Justin Fields over Lance because I think Fields is more of a starter ready prospect. Like I said, I like Atlanta a lot. Matt Ryan is aging. He's not getting any younger. He's washed. And, they have a mediocre offensive line. They have Julio. And they have Calvin Ridley, who has put himself on the map. And they have Hayden Hurst, who isn't terrible, but he's not great. But they have those reliable wide receivers. And, Matt Ryan is not a mobile quarterback. And if they can get a mobile quarterback with a very underrated head coaching hire in Arthur Smith, I would love that. I mean, that would be Justin Fields returns home to Atlanta. But, if you put him in Denver, he's also in a really nice situation.
Atlanta, though, you're putting him behind a quarterback that's going to put you in serious cap debt for the next 3 years if you try to get rid of him. The cap hit for Matt Ryan for the next 2 years is insufferable unless you're the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, that's the one thing about it is, if you're at 4 and you're Atlanta and you want to take a quarterback, I think I would honestly take Trey Lance over Justin Fields just because he needs more time to develop. Matt Ryan, that's not a bad guy to sit behind on the tablet for 2 years with. Just because I think Justin Fields has that immediate talent disparity against Trey Lance, but I think, we're looking at their futures. I think Trey Lance has more upside than Justin Fields does.
And if you look at the Falcons, Sam, I think if they had any indication that they need a quarterback or they were going to draft quarterback, Matt Ryan would have been sent to San Francisco for the 12th pick and a future first. I mean, you look at what Matthew Stafford just got back for Detroit. I think you would have saw a deal very similar for Matthew Stafford, or for Matt Ryan as well.
I think there's also several rumors, too, that Atlanta could, because their new GM, I don't recall his name, he's from the Saints organization. And, they also mentioned Julio. If they trade Julio before June 1st, huge cap hit. And I think if they trade him after June 1st, it's either a $12 or $15 million cap in savings. And if I'm not mistaken, and if I remember correctly, their GM, one of his first, if not his first press conference, had made a lot of indications that he does not see Matt Ryan on his team in the future of this franchise. This team has a lot of cap, a lot of cap space problems. And, that's what Arthur Smith had definitely probably knew what he was getting himself into, who I still think was a very, very nice hire. And they have that offensive-minded coach. I think Atlanta makes sense. I'm not disagreeing with the Denver pick because Denver has, a mastermind of an offensive coordinator in Pat Shurmur, who I think was a very, very underrated pickup. I think it would make a lot of sense, too, especially because I mean, I'll ask you guys this, too. Do you think Vic Fangio is on his way out if they perform at least under 500? because I think that
brief overreaction on your end here.
I
I think Vic Fangio deserved a head coaching job, absolutely. But I don't think Denver was the right spot. I think Denver should have gone for an offensive-minded coach.
see. I think that just because I don't know. I think Pat Shurmur is just because he's their OC. I think Fangio is fine as their head coach. I think he'll be there in the future, even if they have a bad year next year. And if they do have a bad year next year, he can always scapegoat it to Drew Lock or whoever that quarterback is, because I think we can all agree that it's going to come down to that quarterback spot with this team, which at the end of the day, that is more of a GM thing, who they pick at that spot. So I think I think his job is fine. I'm not saying like his job security is out of this world, but I think it's fine. I think it's passable until Trey Lance, Justin Fields, whoever they pick at that spot has a little more time to develop, and maybe like in 3 years or something we'll be talking about Fangio on his way out. But I think he's fine just for now.
I don't think you let the best defensive mind in football walk out of your building if you still have Pat Shurmur as your OC. You look at the Packers; they hired Barry, who has a terrible defensive coordinator track record, and because Matt LaFleur thought he could run the Vic Fangio defense the best. You look at Brandon Staley, a guy who was off the map 2 years ago, barely got the Rams defense coordinator job, and now is the head coach of the Chargers. You look at the Rams, who converted to the Vic Fangio defense, and their defense has been off the charts since. I don't think you let that guy leave your building.
That's fair, especially when you have Bradley Chubb and Von Miller coming back, who Vic Fangio has turned into absolute monsters, or at least helped in that. I mean, Von Miller's been amazing, but
Von Miller's been amazing,
yeah.
But doesn't he have? I don't know what it is. Doesn't he have an off-field issue? Because he was also viewed as a trade candidate. So I think another, position that Denver could also view early is linebacker. And I really, really like Micah Parsons here to Denver, but I get the quarterback. I get the quarterback controversy just because Drew Lock has not proved anything at all. There's a lot of people that see Justin Fields as a day one starter. There's a lot of people that don't see Justin Fields as a guy, that can come in and start day one. But we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting.
Sam, you say that, but I just want to ask you the value. I mean, the value proposition of a court. How many more games do you think Micah Parsons wins that team compared to Justin Fields? Because I would say that number's 3 to 4 games between the two, and I think that leans in Justin Fields' favor.
If they draft Micah Parsons, how many more games?
Yeah, if you take the record this year, I think they win 1 or 2 more games because they got Parsons. I don't think Parsons wins you more games than you did last year. Justin Fields will win you more games than you did last season.
So you immediately think that Justin Fields is not even close, that Justin Fields is going to be that day one starter?
I think if he's not day one, he'll be there by week 4.
Because I think if he's not day one, I think if he's in, I think he will benefit a lot sitting behind a veteran, but I think if he goes to Denver, he'll be starting before midseason.
I would agree, and I think you want the end of the day, you draft players to win football games. And longevity-wise, I mean, you look at middle linebackers, you don't see. I mean, you see the great ones have long careers. You look at others who don't, and I think you look at a quarterback, and you have to take the chance.
It's just.
I mean, you look at next year's quarterback class too. Sorry, Jeff.
It's just positional value.
You're not taking anything.
Next year's quarterback class is decent.
No, don't say that.
It's nothing like this year. I mean, do you even know who's in it that next year? Like who all the guys?
Spencer Rattler, JT Slovis, Daniels.
JT Daniels, Keaton Slovis.
Keaton Slovis is he didn't do a ton this year. Jaden Daniels underrated. Sam Howell.
I mean, you look though. I think Justin Fields is the number 1 pick next year.
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying, why wouldn't you take him at 9 if you can? Take a linebacker next year. It's going to be a little bit deeper relatively compared to quarterback.
And I'm not disagreeing with the quarterback pick at all. We spend a lot of time on this pick. But
yeah, I think we're going to have to call it a night soon. Our viewers are going to have to get to bed. Some people got to work.
I'll have you finish off your thoughts, Sam, and then we'll wrap it up.
No, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with the quarterback pick. I mean, if they take a quarterback, I will be surprised. But there's if we see Mac Jones or Mac Jones or Trey Lance at 3, I think there's going to be several teams calling, like the New England Patriots, if Justin Fields continues to fall, or the Washington Football Team, because anything could happen. The Chiefs traded up from 27 to 10 a few years ago. We all know what happened with that. The rest is history. But I mean, it's not blasphemous at all that Denver is and should be considering a quarterback. The question is, will they actually do it? Or is their front office still a firm believer that Drew Lock can still be their guy?
Very fair.
Yeah. All right, fellas. This has been fun finishing off this mock draft, talking a little bit after about some picks and whatnot. Thank you for joining me, and thanks to all of you watching for joining us as well. You can follow the Blitz on Twitter there at Blitz_FB. Check out the YouTube channel as well if you're watching us on there right now. The Blitz. Anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.